Coming up on Stuck at Home, we're going to talk about the 5 phases of creativity, of the creative process. We're also going to talk about some of the qualities that one can develop in order to be more creative. Welcome to another episode of Stuck at Home. Let's talk creative process, right? Anybody can be creative, first of all. Everybody is an artist. It's not that some people are born more that way and some people aren't. It has to do with how you develop your mind. Even if you think you're not an artist, even if you think you're not creative, you can be. It's all just about how you use your brain. So, let's talk about that. I'm coming to you from my kitchen today because it's also my studio. Ways to be more creative. You need to think about both the phases of the creative process and also the qualities that enhance that creativity.
The phases of creativity are known by a lot of different names. Here's the names I'm going to use: research, germination, inspiration, fine-tuning, and follow-through. Let's take a closer look.
Phases of creativity. The first stage is research, filling the well. So that might include Google searches, that might include field trips, that might include all kinds of things and what they're made of and how they're used and if they're reusable because conservation and reduction of waste is important to me. So how can I do that in that way? So I'm doing all this kind of research. It's very much like being a grad student. I also need to fill the well. I need to have images of things that I find beautiful. I need to get out and experience those things. And it might mean I dress in a kooky outfit, or that I engage in silly play for no reason. Cats in tinfoil hats. Any of these kinds of things. So filling the well.
Filling the well becomes part of the incubation and germination process when you don't feel inspired, and so you have to find things to help fill that emptiness. During this stage, field trips are vital. Viewing other people's art and art museums is vital, and in lieu of that, looking with an artistic eye and developing the ability to see ordinary things as art. It can also be a great time to catch up on housework and chores and self-care because we can't go tug new shoots out of the ground. You have to leave them alone and let them sprout. Creativity works the same way. You have to wait for inspiration and do something else while you wait.
The third phase of creativity is that moment of inspiration, as well as implementing self-discipline. So inspiration is probably the phase that most non-artist people think about or observe in the artist. We're hanging out with our friends, we're following the conversation, and then we get that look in our eye. Stand up abruptly and leave the room. Or we pick up the most random object sitting around us, and we start looking at it really intensely. That's when inspiration strikes, and that's what it looks like from the outside. But here's the dirty little secret. When inspiration finally strikes, you have to have the self-discipline to stop doing everything else and to follow the spark. That doesn't mean that you wait until your TV show is over or wait until the dishes are all the way done. You have to be willing to walk away. You have to have the self-discipline to walk away from that other thing. Conversation with your spouse. Ooh, that could be a messy one. And follow the spark. Because when inspiration strikes, it's like a window opening. and you get insight, but that window isn't open for very long. And if you don't follow it, it goes to the creative graveyard and is rarely resurrected. The fourth phase of creativity is fine-tuning what you've created and getting feedback. Because it's unfinished, I'm going to go to someone I trust that can honor that creative process. I am not going to show it to the general public. I am not going to show it to my biggest critic. It's not ready. It's still in creative phase. So I'm going to go to someone I really trust. Now, the deal with feedback doesn't mean that you do verbatim what was suggested. It means you add it to the recipe. You let it mix around and mold and maybe combine it with other feedback from other people. And then inspiration strikes again, but this time it strikes with that feedback that has processed. And suddenly you know what to do, the next steps to take. If you made it all the way through the other phases of creativity to step 5, you know what to do next. It's not exciting anymore. And implementing it can feel slower or less exciting. But it's just as important. How are you going to have that finished product to put out in the world unless you follow through? I have to be careful that I sort of put my nose to the grindstone and re-engage my self-discipline to follow through on the details of my finished product. For me, a deadline helps. What works for you? Remember to tell me in the comments. Where do you get hung up in your creative process and how do you overcome it? I would love to know. There's one more thing. After you've gone through these 5 phases, there is a rest period. Basking in your joy at your accomplishment or creation, but also an empty time similar to that germination period and you have no inspiration and no ideas, and you're just dwelling in the void. It is really hard to realize that this is really just another phase in the process. Have faith. Trust the process. This is a great time to look at the qualities of being creative and not just the phases of expressing creativity.